The room went silent the second I placed the envelope on the cake table. It was my father's 60th birthday, an over-the-top garden party filled with gold balloons, live string music, and a custom cake that cost more than my rent. Guests stood in tailored suits and gowns, holding crystal flutes filled with champagne. My stepmother beamed from her seat beside him. My half-brother clinked his glass, and then he said it. To family. To bloodline only. That's when I stood up. No one noticed at first. I wasn't wearing designer like the rest of them. I didn't fit the glossy family aesthetic they'd curated for Instagram. But when I walked up to the cake, heels crunching against marble tiles, and dropped the sealed DNA test result next to the gold-plated knife, everyone turned. I looked at my father. His smile faltered. Go on, I said, voice shaking but steady. Open it. His fingers twitched. The guests stared, unsure whether this was a prank or a performance. The air grew thick. Even the violinist stopped playing mid-note. He picked up the envelope like it was a loaded gun, and when he opened it, everything he knew about his precious bloodline shattered. But I didn't stay to watch the fallout, because the truth wasn't just about who I was. It was about what he did, and who he abandoned, in the name of legacy. Let me take you back, because if you told me 5 years ago that I'd one day ruin my father's birthday with a DNA test, I would have laughed in your face. Back then, I didn't even know who my father was. I grew up with a single mom in a one-bedroom apartment, eating canned beans and watching other kids get picked up by dads who wore suits and smelled like cologne. My mom never talked about him. When I asked, her face would freeze. He was just a mistake, she'd say, but I knew there was more, because some mistakes don't come with silver cufflinks and expensive silence. And when my mom died, the truth started unraveling. It began with a photo I found behind the bookshelf that a man in a navy blazer, his arm around my mom. Both smiling. Both too close for it to be nothing. I flipped the photo. A date. A name, and that name would send me on a spiral of secrets, betrayal, and blood. A name that opened doors and slammed others shut in my face. It would take me years, countless sleepless nights, and a painful betrayal to finally stand at that cake table and tell the truth. But trust me, the moment I saw him raise that glass and toast to bloodline only, I knew exactly when to drop the bomb. And now he'll have to live with what he tried to bury, because some bloodlines bleed guilt. If you grew up knowing your father's name, you probably take that for granted. I didn't. For most of my life, Dad was just a word other kids used. It had no shape, no face. In our cramped apartment on the 3rd floor of a peeling brick building, it was just me and Mom, Loretta Michaels. She had these tired green eyes and a voice that could switch from warm honey to steel in seconds. She worked 2 jobs, waitressing at a diner by day, cleaning offices by night, and still somehow managed to sew the hem of my uniform or leave a sticky note in my lunchbox with, "You've got this, baby," scrawled in bright pink marker. She never told me who he was. Every time I asked, her eyes would flicker with something between regret and fear. "He's not worth it," she'd say. "Some people don't deserve to be remembered." At 12, that answer broke my heart. At 24, it made me furious. I always imagined he was some deadbeat who walked out before I was born. Maybe a one-night stand. Maybe a guy with commitment issues, but the truth, it was uglier. And far more deliberate. I wasn't looking for him when I found the photo. Mom had been gone 3 months, pancreatic cancer. Fast. Ruthless. Unfair. I had just returned from the hospital one evening to our empty apartment, which now echoed like a museum of grief. I couldn't even touch her coffee mug in the sink. I tried to be practical. Sort her things. Pack. Move forward. I told myself. I found the photo while boxing up old books behind the living room shelf. It was wedged between pages of an old cookbook, like it had been hidden, not forgotten. In it, my mom looked happy. She stood beside a tall, sharply dressed man in a navy blue blazer, his hand resting gently on the small of her back. He had dark hair with flecks of silver, strong features, and a smile that seemed, at first glance, warm. But when I flipped the photo over, I froze. June 1998, me and Charles at Lakewind. Charles, I didn't know a Charles. Lakewind was the name of a private estate outside of town, somewhere I'd only heard of in passing. where the wealthy hosted galas and garden parties. Who was this man? It started small, just Googling Charles Lakewind. No last name. No context, but the internet has a way of rewarding obsession. It didn't take long to find him. Charles Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore & Company, a corporate legal firm that handled inheritance cases, family estates, trust law. Big money, married, 2 kids, public appearances. Speeches. Articles in Forbes and the Wall Street Journal, and there, in a 2001 magazine clipping, was the same man from the photo, standing beside a blonde woman and a boy who looked about 3. All dressed in white, on the lawn of a mansion. Suddenly, my whole body went cold. This wasn't a mistake. It was my origin story, rewritten. My mother hadn't been abandoned by a careless boyfriend, she had been erased by a powerful man with everything to lose. I stared at the computer screen until my eyes blurred. Could it be coincidence? Maybe that wasn't him in the photo. Maybe Charles was someone else entirely, but then I found another photo, this time of a younger Charles with a gold ring on his right pinky finger, the same ring I'd seen in the original photo with my mom's eye. Zoomed in, there was no denying it now. I was the hidden child of Charles Whitmore, and he had spent my entire life pretending I didn't exist. You'd think I'd march to his office the next day and demand the truth, but I didn't, not yet, because I had nothing, no proof, no DNA test, no leverage. And Charles Whitmore wasn't just anyone. He was a man who built his career protecting the legacies of powerful families. The kind of man who understood paper trails, silence, and plausible deniability. I needed to be smarter than that. I started with small steps, calling Lakewind Estate under a fake name, pretending to inquire about catering services. I asked about past guest lists and events from the late 90s. No luck. Then I tried something riskier. I followed his son, Caleb Whitmore, on social media. He was a walking cliché, yacht parties, whiskey tastings, golf trips with captions like, "Grind never stops briefcase." His world was so far from mine it felt like watching a Netflix show, but one post caught my eye. Got a birthday party in 3 weeks at their estate, and it was open invite to friends and extended family. That was the first time I used the word family in connection with them. It felt like trying on a stranger's coat, too big. Too unfamiliar. But mine that I reached out to an independent genetic testing lab, scraped together every dollar I had, and submitted my DNA. They needed a comparative sample. That's when I realized, I didn't need Charles, I just needed Caleb. I waited outside a luxury gym one morning, dressed in basic workout clothes, earbuds in. When Caleb emerged, I accidentally bumped into him, spilling my water all over his sleeve. Apologies. Laughs. Small talk. He was charming in a smarmy, rich kid kind of way. I played dumb, flirted just enough, and offered to grab coffee sometime. He said yes. Rich kids love attention. The next week, we met again. I asked to try on his sunglasses. When he handed them over, I palmed the part that sat behind his ears. Later, I mailed that swab to the lab, and I waited. When the envelope arrived, I didn't open it right away. It sat on my kitchen table for hours, because as much as I wanted the truth, some truths rewrite your entire life. When I finally peeled it open, my hands shook. Probability of half-sibling relationship, 99.9982%. It was real. I was a Whitmore. Whether they liked it or not, I didn't storm the gates. I didn't sue. I didn't post it online, because I knew men like Charles that he would deny it. Claim I was unstable. That my mother was lying. That I forged the results. That he wouldn't acknowledge me in private, but maybe, just maybe, he wouldn't be able to deny me in public, especially not at his birthday party in front of his curated, spotless world. That brings us to the invitation. I didn't receive one, of course. But I RSVP'd anyway, under a variation of my mother's maiden name, Lauren M. Wren. I had an old college ID to back it up. With a borrowed dress from a thrift store and rented heels, I looked the part. Polished. Neutral. Invisible. The Whitmore estate was everything I'd imagined: lush hedges, marble fountains, valet parking, and chandeliers hanging from oak trees. Guests sipped champagne and exchanged stories about summer homes in Cape Cod. No one looked twice at me, until the toast. I heard it before I saw him, Charles clinking his glass. He was older now. Thinner. But still held himself like the room belonged To him, his wife stood beside him, icy and regal, and Caleb was on the other side. Smug and confident, unaware that his existence had just confirmed mine, Charles raised his glass, scanning the crowd. To 60 years of life. And to the people who matter most, my family. My legacy. My bloodline. People laughed. Applauded. Toasted, and I walked forward, step by step, until I reached the cake and gently set the DNA test on the silver-plated tablecloth. Internal monologue, as this scene sets in motion the rest of the story. I thought I'd feel nervous. I didn't. I thought I'd second-guess myself, but no. As I stood there, surrounded by everything I'd been denied, respect, recognition, truth, I felt steady. Strong. He wanted to toast to Bloodline? Fine. Let's talk about Bloodline. Let's talk about what happens when secrets grow roots. Let's talk about what a man becomes when he hides his own child for 25 years. Let's talk about me, because I'm done being invisible. He didn't open the envelope right away. Charles stared at it like it was a ticking bomb. His fingers trembled just slightly, the kind of tremble you only notice when you're watching for it. His wife glanced at him, confused. Caleb frowned. I could feel the eyes of the crowd shifting toward me, some amused, others uncomfortable. One woman whispered, "Is this part of the speech?" Charles cleared his throat. "Excuse me. Miss?" I held my ground. "Go ahead. Open it." His smile thinned. "I don't know what this is, but it's the truth," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "A truth you've hidden for over 2 decades. A hush fell over the garden. Charles's wife, Victoria, I later learned, reached for his arm. "Charles, what is she talking about?" He turned toward her, voice tight. "I have no idea. This is some kind of sly." I interrupted. "Forgery? Scam? Say it. Say what you rehearsed in your head for years, just in case someone like me ever showed up." His face flushed. The crowd buzzed. Someone pulled out their phone. "I think you should leave," Victoria said, her voice slicing through the air. I looked at her. "Tall, graceful, cold, you might want to read that first," I replied, gesturing to the envelope. Charles finally picked it up, hands stiff like he was holding a dead animal. He ripped the seal and pulled out the paper. His eyes scanned the words, and stopped. His grip tightened, all color drained from his face. Beside him, Caleb peeked over his shoulder. "What is it, Dad?" Charles didn't answer. He folded the paper once, then again, trying to shrink it out of existence, but it was too late. The truth was already out. "I'm your daughter," I said calmly. "My mother was Loretta Michaels." Victoria let out a sharp inhale like she'd been slapped. Charles dropped the paper. "No," he said. "No, this isn't real. You told her she didn't matter. You told her to disappear. And she did. For 25 years. Until cancer took her. Alone." I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, but my voice stayed strong. "She kept the secret. But I'm not her. I don't owe you silence." "Security," Victoria snapped, signaling to someone near the garden gate. "Remove her. Now." 2 suited men began walking toward me, but before they reached me, Caleb grabbed the paper off the ground and scanned it. His eyes darted between me and his father. "Is this real?" he asked. Charles didn't respond. "Dad, is this real?" Still, silence. That was the moment, that sliver of hesitation, that single beat where Charles could have said no and denied everything. Could have kept his kingdom intact, but he didn't. Instead, he looked down, at the grass, at the paper, at his polished shoes. He didn't lie. He didn't speak, and in that silence, I won. Caleb's jaw clenched. "Jesus, Dad." I could see the dominoes starting to fall. The foundation cracking, and then Charles looked up at me, those same green eyes as mine, and whispered, "You should have stayed gone." That's when I felt it, not victory, not closure, just cold, because it wasn't regret in his voice. It was warning. They didn't drag me out. I left on my own, head high, the whispers trailing behind me like perfume. Outside the gates, I exhaled for the first time. It was done. I had exposed the truth. Made him say nothing in front of everyone. Let his silence damn him, but as I walked to the borrowed car waiting for me across the street, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, "You have no idea what you've started." I remember sitting on the floor of my apartment, staring at a photo of my mother from her nursing school graduation. She had a full life. A career. Friends. And a secret. She could have ruined Charles if she wanted to, but she didn't. She protected him, and me, I used to think that made her weak. Now I know it made her better than him, but I'm not better. I want truth, I want reckoning, and I want to know why she let him go without a fight, because if he was the monster I think he is, then what does that make me? The press picked up the story within 24 hours. Legal mogul Charles Whitmore faces illegitimacy scandal after public DNA drama. Everywhere I turned, Twitter, Instagram, business blogs, there I was. That girl. The secret daughter, and just. When I thought things couldn't escalate further, they did. 2 days later, I received a letter, delivered by courier. Thick, cream-colored paper. Wax seal with the Whitmore family crest, inside, a formal invitation, private. Confidential. No press. Attendance required. Do not bring additional parties. Failure to appear will be taken as a formal refusal of any claims to the estate. It was signed at the bottom, Victoria Whitmore, and written in pen beside her signature. Let's see if you're as brave behind closed doors. I arrived at the Whitmore estate for the second time in a week. This time, not as a gatecrasher. This time, they invited me, but it didn't feel like an invitation. It felt like a trap. The same towering wrought iron gates opened with a slow mechanical groan, revealing the pristine estate like a museum of generational wealth. The trees were too symmetrical, the hedges trimmed with surgical precision. Everything here screamed controlled. As I stepped out of the Uber, a man in a black suit with an earpiece approached me. "Miss Wren," he said. "Follow me." I said nothing. Just walked through the white marble foyer, past oil portraits of stiff men with sharp jawlines and cold eyes. The kind of men who'd never admit weakness. Never admit me. We stopped in front of a set of double doors. He opened them, and there they were, the Whitmore Family Legacy Council, seated in antique leather chairs around a glass conference table were Victoria Whitmore, razor sharp in a slate gray suit. Caleb, lounging with crossed arms, jaw tight. Charles, of course. Silent, seated at the head, eyes dark. And two others I didn't recognize, an older man and woman who looked like they walked straight out of a Hamptons vineyard. I sat down without being asked, and no one offered me water or a greeting. Victoria spoke first. "Let's skip the formalities. You dropped a DNA test on my husband's cake table. Now you're here. What is it that you want, exactly?" I looked at her, calm. "The truth. And my name." The older man, probably Charles's brother or cousin, leaned forward. "Let's be clear. No court has validated this claim. And even if you are biologically Charles's child, that doesn't entitle you to the Whitmore estate." "I never said anything about money," I replied. "But thanks for confirming that's your biggest concern." Charles finally spoke. His voice was quiet, but loaded. "You've made your point. You humiliated me. Is that what you wanted?" "No," I said. "I wanted acknowledgement. You gave me erasure." The air crackled with tension. Victoria stood and walked around the table toward me. "You're not getting our name. You're not being added to any legacy. And you certainly won't be allowed to drag this family through the courts." She leaned in close. "Walk away. Quietly. And I promise, we'll leave you alone." I stared her dead in the eyes. "I'm not afraid of you." "You should be," she whispered. Later that night, I received an email from an anonymous address, subject. She wasn't the first. Attached was a grainy PDF. A scanned police report. It was dated 1989. A woman's name redacted. The location? Lakewind Estate. Accusation, coercion and improper conduct by Charles Whitmore. I read it 3 times. It couldn't be. Was my mother not the only one? I called the number listed at the bottom, Detective J. Cardenas, disconnected. I started digging, and what I found changed everything. Charles had buried more than one secret. There were 2 other women who'd worked for the Whitmores in the late 80s and early 90s, but both left suddenly and no legal trail. No lawsuits. Just gone. I tracked one down on an old genealogy blog. Her name was Elena Price. She lived 3 hours away. I messaged her through a burner Facebook account. She replied the next morning. I knew this day would come. I never wanted to talk about it again. But maybe it's time. We met at a quiet diner halfway between our towns. Elena was soft-spoken, in her 50s now, with eyes that darted around like someone used to looking over her shoulder. Charles was charming. Too charming, she said. He always made you feel like you were the only one in the room. Until you said no. I swallowed hard. Did you have a child? She hesitated, then nodded. A son. Gave him up for adoption. I wasn't given a choice, really. My hands went cold. She reached into her purse and slid a photo across the table. The boy looked like Caleb's twin. I stared at it. You need to speak up, I said. I tried once. Back in '95. They made it disappear. My job, my housing, everything. I was on the street within a month. My throat tightened. This wasn't just a legacy of silence. It was enforced silence. Elena squeezed my hand. You think you're the first? You're just the first one brave or angry enough to show up. When I got home that night, my apartment had been broken into and not ransacked. Not trashed, just disturbed. Someone had been through my drawers. My filing cabinet. Even my laptop had been moved. Nothing stolen. Nothing obvious, except the envelope with the original DNA report, gone. That was the first time I really felt fear creep in, not anxiety. Not tension, a fear they were trying to erase me again, but this time, I had a backup. A digital copy. Stored on a cloud server under a fake name. I wasn't going down that easily. The next day, I received a call from Caleb. I almost didn't answer. Why are you calling me? I said coldly. He sighed. We need to talk. Privately. I don't think we have anything to say. I'm not like them, he said. Just meet me. 1 hour. There's something you need to see. I met him in a nondescript parking garage. He handed me a USB drive. These are Dad's old emails. From the private server. He thinks I'm too stupid to know how encryption works. What's on here? He looked me in the eyes for the first time. Proof he paid off your mom. And Elena. And probably others. I stared at him. Why help me? He gave a bitter smile. Because I'm not proud of my name either. Later that night, I clicked through the files, invoices, email chains, legal hush agreements, even personal notes. LM needs to disappear. I'll handle it. $40K wired. No more contact. EP is a threat, recommend relocation. It was worse than I thought. This wasn't just a mistake, this was a pattern. A system, and my mother, God bless her, had chosen silence, not because she was weak, but because she knew the world she was up against. But now, he didn't own the narrative anymore. I contacted a journalist, one who specialized in corporate misconduct and legal abuse of power. I sent her everything, under an alias. She responded within the hour. This could be the story of the year. But we need you on the record. I hesitated. Going public would destroy them, but it might destroy me, too. There'd be no hiding and no walking it back, then no normal life ever again. And then I remembered my mother's eyes, clouded with pain in her final weeks, how she kept that photo hidden for all those years, not to protect him, but to protect me. So I said yes. 3 days later. The article went live. Headline: Whitmore Empire built on secrets, illegitimate child speaks out as evidence of coercion emerges. It exploded. Every major outlet picked it up. Charles's photo, once pristine, dignified, now flashed across TV screens with words like scandal, cover-up, and DNA deception. The firm issued a vague statement. Charles Whitmore took a sudden leave of absence. Victoria disappeared from public events. Caleb deactivated his social media. And me, I stood on the steps of the courthouse with a microphone in my hand and the press in my face. Why now? What do you want from the Whitmores? Are you after the money? I looked straight into the lens. I'm not here for money. I'm here because girls like my mother and Elena deserve more than silence. And because secrets don't die just because the people who keep them do. That night, I received one last letter, a handwritten note, in a plain white envelope that it read, "You may have won the court of public opinion. But you've made powerful enemies. This isn't over." And for the first time, I believed her because power doesn't die quietly, it strikes back, and I just lit a match in a room full of gasoline. I didn't hear the knock at first. I was sitting on the floor of my apartment, knees pulled to my chest, surrounded by silence that felt louder than any chaos the Whitmores had ever thrown at me. The email notifications had stopped, the news cycle had moved on, the world kept spinning. But I felt like I'd come to a full, paralyzing stop. I hadn't slept in 2 days. Barely eaten. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's face, tired, beautiful, betrayed, and Charles's words echoed on loop, "You should have stayed." Gone. I thought exposing the truth would set me free. I thought justice would taste sweet, but all I felt was numb. The knock came again. Firmer, then a voice. "Ren. It's Caleb." I didn't answer. My voice was somewhere deep beneath the grief. The door creaked open anyway. I must have forgotten to lock it. Of course I had. My mind wasn't working right anymore. He stepped in, saw me on the floor, and froze. Jesus. Ren, I couldn't even look at him. I just kept my eyes on the floor. The place where the DNA envelope used to sit. Where my mother's secrets had exploded into a storm I wasn't ready for. He crouched down beside me. "Hey, talk to me." My voice cracked. Why does it still hurt this much?" "Because you're human." "No," I whispered, trembling. "Because I thought, maybe after all this, he'd finally see me." "Say it. Just once. Out loud." Caleb was quiet. "I didn't want money," I said. "Or the name. I just wanted to be real. To him. Not a stain. Not an inconvenience. Just real." I buried my head in my hands. My chest felt like it was caving in. All the strength I'd built at the defiance, the fury, the armor, cracked like glass. I thought telling the world would make the pain smaller, I whispered. But it didn't. It just made me smaller. Caleb looked away. Guilty. Maybe ashamed. "I don't know, I'm sorry," he said. "For all of it. For him. For not stepping in sooner." I let out a bitter laugh. "He doesn't even hate me. That would have been something. He just erased me. And I let it destroy everything inside." He sat with me. Quietly. Like he knew words wouldn't matter now. Later that night, I pulled out the box I hadn't opened since the funeral. Them my mother's keepsakes, nursing awards. Old letters. A locket with a photo of me as a baby on one side. And a folded note on the other. I'd never unfolded it before, but tonight, I did. Her handwriting was delicate, shaky near the end. It read, "If you ever feel like the pain is winning, remember, you come from a long line of women who survived. Men like him. You are more than blood. You are fire." I clutched the note to my chest and cried, not like I had before. Not from anger or betrayal, but from exhaustion. I cried because I was tired of holding it all in. Tired of pretending I was some unbreakable truth warrior. Tired of being everyone's symbol. I just wanted to be Ren. A girl who lost her mom. A girl who never had a dad. A girl who tried to build something out of ashes. And in that moment, I made a choice. I would stop waiting for Charles Whitmore to acknowledge me. His approval was no longer the currency I measured myself by. I didn't need his name. I had my mother's, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The next morning, I woke up to an alert. Breaking, Charles Whitmore hospitalized after stroke, family releases statement. My heart sank, not out of love, but from the cruel timing of it all. The man I had built my war around was now lying in a hospital bed, unable to speak. The showdown I wanted, if needed, would never come. There'd be no final word. No courtroom reckoning. No apology, just silence. Again, I stood in front of the hospital later that day, staring up at the glass windows, wondering which one was his. I didn't go inside. I didn't need to, because the final chapter wasn't his to write. It was mine. I didn't go inside the hospital. Standing in the parking lot was enough, a reminder that karma had its own timeline. That sometimes, fate delivered the silence you spent your whole life giving to others. Charles Whitmore would never answer my questions, never say my name, never face me, and that, oddly, gave me a strange sense of peace, because now, there was nothing left to chase, only something to build. I moved out of my apartment the next week. Not to run, but to start over. I sold the few things that held memories too heavy to carry and packed the rest into boxes labeled future, not past. In a tiny new place across the city, with peeling paint and leaky faucets, I finally felt something I hadn't in months. Control. But peace didn't last long, because truth doesn't stay buried, and neither do secrets. 3 weeks later, I got a message request on Facebook from someone I didn't know, Julian Whitmore. I froze. My hands hovered above my phone. His profile was private, no pictures, no posts, just a single message. I'm not who they said I was. Can we talk? I clicked his profile photo. It was him, the boy from Elena's photo. Charles's other child. My half-brother. We met at a coffee shop downtown. Neutral ground. He was nervous, shifting in his seat, eyes darting around like he thought someone might be following him. I didn't even know his name until a year ago, Julian said. My adoptive mom told me he was just a family friend who helped with bills. I found the papers last year when she passed. I nodded, letting him speak. He rubbed his hands together. I thought I was the only one. Until the articles came out, until you. I didn't know about you either, I said gently. He looked up. I think there are more of us. The words hung in the air. He was a machine, Julian said. Controlled everything. Even people. He slid a USB drive across the table. What is this? Emails between my birth mother and his legal team. Same wording. Same hush money. Same clauses. I swallowed. How many had there been? I took the drive, thanked him, and watched him leave. Still cloaked in fear. That night, I printed every document. Laid them out on my kitchen table like puzzle pieces, and what I saw made my stomach turn. A pattern. A blueprint. A system. Years of silencing. Same settlement structure. Same exact phrasing. This matter is not an admission of wrongdoing but a mutual agreement to preserve dignity and privacy. Code 4, we did it. Now shut up and disappear. This wasn't about family anymore. It was a decades-long power operation, and Charles wasn't the only one behind it. Victoria's name appeared on at least 5 of the legal documents. She wasn't just protecting him, she was running point. I needed help. Real help. I reached out to Cleo Mendoza, the journalist I'd originally sent my story to. She had contacts, resources, a nose for patterns the law ignored. We met again, this time in a law office she had ties with. I want to do something bigger. I told her. Not just tell a story. I want to expose the whole structure. Cleo narrowed her eyes. You understand the risk? I do now. She leaned back. You're not the only one. 2 other women came forward after your article. And now, with this, she tapped the USB. This is bigger than a scandal. It's a civil rights case. Maybe even RICO level. That's when we looped in attorney Marcus Hale, black. Fierce. 10 years fighting corporate abuse and hush money culture. He reviewed everything, then looked at me across the glass table. This could change everything. But they'll come at you harder than ever. I met his eyes. Let them. Marcus smiled. Let's burn the machine. We spent the next month building the case. Julian agreed to join the suit. Elena, too, nervously at first, but then with fire in her voice. We anonymized others. Every testimony layered in like bricks for a reckoning that had been decades overdue. We gathered financial trails, flight logs, calendars. Emails if Victoria had tied herself to every single one. She wasn't protecting a legacy, she was managing a criminal operation under the pretense of old money and elite status. When we filed the class action suit, the media exploded again, but this time, the narrative had changed. I wasn't just the illegitimate daughter, I was the whistleblower, the woman who said no, the daughter who wouldn't vanish. Victoria released a statement. These allegations are a coordinated attack by individuals with a vendetta against a grieving family. We will fight this with everything we have. I bet she would, because for the first time. She was scared. Caleb called me the night after the suit went public. Thought he sounded different. Strained. Real. I want you to know. I believe you. About all of it. You knew enough to be suspicious, I said softly. But you looked away. I didn't want it to be true. I wanted to believe Dad was just flawed. I paused. He was a predator, Caleb. I know that now. There was silence, then he added, I can help. I'm still on the board. I can leak internal records. That caught me off guard. You'd betray your family? He exhaled. I already did the moment I let you walk into that birthday alone. Over the next 2 weeks, Caleb fed us internal memos, non-disclosure reports, and financial transfers Victoria had signed off on. The net was closing in. We were weeks away from a public hearing, and that's when the final twist came. A no sender. Handwritten. Clean white papered. It read, Ren. If you continue, people will get hurt. We're not above making this go away. For good. Stop before we make you stop. No signature, but I didn't need one. This was Victoria's final move, not a threat, a promise. I turned the letter over and found a photo clip to the back. It was Julian at AT work, taken from a distance. My stomach dropped. She was targeting the others. Now, trying to scare us into silence, but it only strengthened my resolve, because this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about every woman who had been buried beneath family names and polite society. We took the photo and letter to the press. It became headline news. Whitmore family accused of witness intimidation, DA considers criminal charges. Victoria went dark. Board members began stepping down, investors pulled out of the Whitmore conglomerate one by one. And for the first time in their history, the Whitmore family was no longer untouchable. They were bleeding, and I was the one who had drawn first blood, but I didn't smile, not yet, because we still had one thing left of the hearing, the final confrontation, the one place Victoria had to show up under oath, I and the light, where the world would see the woman behind the empire. The courthouse was packed. Reporters lined the steps like vultures circling legacy. Camera flashes lit the marble entrance. Protesters held signs, some with my name, others demanding truth, justice, blood, but inside, it was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence where reputations die, and history gets rewritten. I took my seat at the front of the chamber. My hands rested in my lap, but inside, my heart pounded like war drums. Across from me, Victoria Whitmore sat poised in a navy blue suit, pearls, polished hair, and eyes cold enough to freeze steel, but even with all her polish, she looked smaller than usual, not in stature I in control, because she wasn't running this show anymore. She was about to be cross-examined under oath. Judge Langley, a firm but fair woman, entered. The room rose and settled. She reviewed the proceedings in crisp legal tone. Today, we hear opening witness statements for the civil complaint filed against the Whitmore Trust and associated board members, including Mrs. Victoria Whitmore. My name was called first. I stood slowly, walked to the stand, and looked out over the courtroom. I wasn't just speaking for myself anymore. I was the voice of every silenced woman they thought they'd buried. Marcus Hale gave me the nod. I began. My name is Ren Avery. I'm 29 years old. I was born from an affair Charles Whitmore had with my mother, a nurse he discarded after I was born. She raised me alone. She died before I ever heard him say my name. I paused, the weight of the truth pressing on my throat. I came here today not to destroy a family, but to expose a system. One designed to erase people like me. To buy silence. To protect predators. And to maintain a myth that cost so many of us our dignity. I turned slightly toward Victoria. And it wasn't just Charles who built it. It was her. All eyes shifted to Victoria, her lip twitched at a single crack in her perfect facade. I presented the emails. The settlement contracts. The testimonies. Julian's birth certificate. Elena's. NDAs. Caleb's leaked documents. I spoke for 47 minutes, and when I finished, the room was dead silent, not even a cough. Judge Langley nodded. Thank you, Ms. Avery. You may step down. Then it was Victoria's turn. She walked slowly to the stand. Chin lifted. Hands still. Perfect posture, perfect lies, her attorney began gently. Mrs. Whitmore, did you ever sign hush payments regarding illegitimate children on behalf of your late husband? I signed agreements that protected the reputation of this foundation, she said calmly. And safeguarded vulnerable women from scandal. Were these women coerced? Of course not. They were compensated fairly. It was mutual. Discretion. Did you ever threaten anyone? A pause. A calculated smile. No. I offered options. Then Marcus stood, and the temperature of the room dropped. He was surgical. Mrs. Whitmore, when did you first learn about Ren Avery? When she started showing up in tabloids. Before that? No, he clicked the screen behind him. An old email appeared from Victoria dated years before I ever came forward. Subject, Ren Avery, monitor. Do not engage, the courtroom gasped. Marcus smiled. You expect the court to believe you never knew she existed, yet you had her surveilled by a private firm? Victoria's hands clenched. That was a precaution. Against what? A grieving nurse's daughter? Against chaos. Or truth. He clicked again, more documents, settlement agreements bearing her signature, payment logs to Elena, digital voice recordings, her voice saying, we can make this go away. Or we can make you go away. The room froze. Victoria's eyes darted. To her lawyer, her poise was slipping. Her words came faster now, less polished. This is a witch hunt. These are edited. This is your voice? Marcus interrupted. Yes or no? Silence. I stared at her, this woman who had erased me, who had sent veiled threats, who sat in power for decades, never questioned, never challenged, and now she looked exactly like what she had always been, a gatekeeper for a dynasty built on lies. Then it was my turn to question her. A rare move, but Judge Langley allowed it. I rose, walked toward her, and locked eyes with her. She didn't blink. Do you know what I wanted more than anything growing up? She said nothing. I kept going. To be seen. Just seen. Not claimed. Not welcomed. Just seen. Like I mattered. Like I existed. My voice cracked. You took that from me. Still, no reply. And now, when you could apologize, you sit here and deny. She finally spoke. Because you don't deserve it. The air left the room. She turned fully toward me. You were a mistake. A stain. I spent my entire life cleaning up Charles's dirt. And now you want to stand here and act like a victim? You are the scandal. My knees went weak, but I stood my ground. No. I am the evidence. Judge Langley banged the gavel for order. Victoria's outburst had shattered any credibility she clung to. The courtroom was stunned. Whispers spread. Cameras clicked. Victoria's lawyer slumped in his chair. He knew she was done. The hearing ended. Shortly after, the judge called for deliberation, but we knew the tide had turned, and the next morning, the verdict came in. The Whitmore Trust would pay a settlement in the 8-figure range. Victoria Whitmore was stripped of all board positions. A federal investigation was opened. The empire didn't fall in one day, but the wall cracked, and I was the one who swung the hammer. After it was over, I stood on the courthouse steps. Dozens of reporters called my name. Ren, how does it feel? Do you have a message for the Whitmore family? What's next for you? I didn't say much, just one line. You can't bury truth forever. It digs its way out. Back home that night, I found a letter in my mailbox and a no return address. Inside, a single sheet, you were never invisible. He watched your ballet recital once. He sat in the very back. I made sure you never knew, because I was afraid you'd come for the name. But you came for the truth. And that's why you won. I stared at the words for a long time. I didn't cry, I didn't smile, I just folded the letter, and burned it. Some fires deserve to stay lit. It didn't feel like victory, not the way movies make it seem. There was no slow clap. No golden light. No triumphant music swelling in the background as I walked off into the sunset, just quiet, that a kind of stillness I hadn't felt in years, and in that silence, I finally heard myself point. 6 months later, my life looks nothing like the one I lived before. I'm not the daughter of a dynasty, not a whisper in a powerful man's shame. I'm just me, Ren Avery, writer, advocate, survivor. The settlement wasn't just a number on paper. It became fuel. I launched a non-profit called Unwritten Names, a legal aid and mental health support foundation for women who were hidden, erased, or paid to stay silent. We fund DNA testing, legal representation, whistleblower protection. Julian works with me now, head of digital infrastructure. That we're not exactly close like siblings on TV. We don't finish each other's sentences or laugh over childhood memories. We never had, but we look out for each other, and sometimes, that's enough. Elena came forward publicly, nervous at first, but now a bold speaker in her own right. She leads our outreach division in Chicago. The same woman Victoria once called disposable. Now, people listen when she speaks, because power isn't a bloodline. It's voiced. I visited Caleb once, in the garden of the old Whitmore estate. The house was being gutted. No more secret rooms. No more silver-framed lies. He looked different, older. Somehow. Or maybe just, unburdened. I wanted to hate you, I told him. But I think you hated yourself more. He nodded slowly. I did. For a long time. But maybe, this was always how the truth was supposed to come out. Not with a whisper, I said, but with thunder. Victoria was never criminally convicted, but she lost everything that mattered to her, her board seats, her reputation, her legacy. She moved to Europe. Last I heard. Funny how someone who orchestrated decades of silence ended up living in exile. Silent and fitting. People still ask me what I would have done if Charles had lived long enough to face me. I never really know how to answer, because the truth is, I didn't need his apology, I didn't need his name, and what I needed was to belong to myself. To write my own story, without waiting for permission, recognition, or approval, and in doing that, I found peace. Sometimes I visit my mother's grave. I bring her sunflowers, her favorite. I tell her what I'm doing, that her silence wasn't for nothing, that the daughter she raised alone changed more than a name, she changed the game, and I hope, somewhere, wherever she is, she's proud. I get letters now, from strangers, daughters who were denied the truth, sons who were lied to, women who lived in shadows and finally stepped into light. They all say the same thing in different ways. I thought I was invisible. But your story made me visible again. And every time I read one, I whisper the same thing back. You were never invisible. They just refused to see. And maybe that's the real legacy, not the money, or the case, or even the headlines, but the spark, the reminder that no system, no name, no dynasty has the right to erase you, not when your voice still works, not when your truth still burns. I'll leave you with this. Look at your own family, your own story. Ask yourself, what truths have you buried to keep someone else comfortable? And when you're ready, dig them up and tell your story, because if this journey has taught me anything, it's that power only wins when we stay silent, and we're done being quiet. Movie camera. If this story moved you, if it made you think of someone who needs to hear it, share it. Backhand index pointing down. Like, comment below with your own story, and hit subscribe. Because these aren't just stories, they're truths that demand to be heard, and I'll be here telling them point one voice at a time.